Where I am in the world, we're only 3 days away from the very long-awaited release of Pikmin 4. This is, of course, very exciting and has many of us Pikmin fans counting the seconds. Many people, like myself, have even tried to figure out when Pikmin 4 takes place in regards to the rest of the series, which, by the way, is not as straightforward as it seems, despite what you may think. With a lot of things appearing in Pikmin 4 that were initially introduced in Hey Pikmin, it's got me thinking a lot about Hey Pikmin in particular. Specifically, Hey Pikmin's placement on the timeline, its effects on the rest of the series, and even its canonicity. Hello everyone, you're watching Variety Television and welcome to another Pikmin video. Today, we're discussing the overall impacts of Hey Pikmin on the franchise and if it even matters at all. Thanks for taking the time to tune in to today's video. And if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to make sure you're subscribed, that would help out the channel quite a bit. With that out of the way, let's get on with today's video. For starters, I think it's most important to discuss influential things introduced to the franchise through Hey Pikmin, and how it all fits together. Canonicity aside for the moment, what deeper insights into the world of Pikmin can we glean from Hey Pikmin? For starters, a couple of really important details in regards to story, character development, the Pikmin, and PNF 404. For the story and characters, we actually see Olimar flying a ship called the Dolphin 2. The Dolphin 2 is important for many reasons, but two that are really important to us. The first is the fact that the ship exists at all and is named the Dolphin 2. This implies that the ship was owned by Olimar after the Dolphin, which, like, duh, but that's a more major detail due to Pikmin 3. Olimar talks about wanting to use some of the treasure he brings back to purchase back his ship, the Dolphin. This means Hey Pikmin probably has to take place at least after Pikmin 3, but potentially after Pikmin 4 as well. I say this because we clearly see Olimar piloting his original ship, the Dolphin, throughout Pikmin 4. To me, it's more likely that regardless of where it is in the timeline, an upgraded version of the ship wouldn't exist until the original was out of commission. Hey Pikmin influenced the franchise further than the timeline, however, as one of the major things we do in the Rescue Core is taken straight out of Hey Pikmin, collecting Sparklium. Its uses in Hey Pikmin and in Pikmin 4 are both as a fuel source. Hang with me for a second now, because technologically speaking, this is beyond interesting to me, and you're about to be a little blown away here as well. Get this. In Pikmin 1, 2, and 3, we have no need to collect any fuel source. In 2 and 3, it could be because the ships are largely unharmed and could have enough fuel on board. But Pikmin 1 is an especially interesting case. The Dolphin runs on fuel, but it also has a special part called the Eternal Fuel Dynamo that makes an unlimited supply of fuel for Olimar's ship. But it seems to me that the technology revolving around fuel seems to degrade over time. I would assume that if the Dolphin had an Eternal Fuel Dynamo, the Dolphin 2 would as well, but we need to collect Sparklium as fuel for the ship in that game. Taking that further, if this technology exists, why does the Rescue Core not utilize this as well? We even see one of our crewmates complain that the SS Shepherd should have had a backup fuel source instead of the treasure naming AI. Why though? Why take a backup fuel source when eternal fuel sources exist? Next up is the fact that Pikmin can pluck other Pikmin. We never see this anywhere else, but a cutscene in Hey Pikmin does depict this in action. I have a really interesting theory about why we don't see them do this often and why their behavior is the way it is, but that's for another day. I don't think I have anything necessarily to add to this, I just wanted to point it out. The next piece of information to discuss is that of the planet of Hey Pikmin itself. This planet is very clearly not PNF 404, and if it is, it's been left in a completely unrecognizable state. This planet and game both do a lot of really weird things to the story of Pikmin, the kind of things you'd stop hanging out with people over. For one, the planet depicted here is referred to as an unknown and mysterious planet, despite Olimar having made multiple trips to PNF 404. This, along with the fact that the planet has no host star, tends to lead us away from the idea that this is the same planet that we've been seeing. Okay, I hear you. So Olimar crashes on a different planet. What's so weird about that? Well, for starters, all of the Pikmin exist on this planet, meaning that if it is a different planet, Pikmin are a multiplanetary species. We also see many of the same fauna from PNF 404, meaning more of the species are multiplanetary. We see architecture from a clearly human civilization, meaning humans in this universe were once multiplanetary too. If they were, why are they gone on both planets? And how did all these species become multiplanetary in the first place? I'm sure you can see now why the title of this video is what it is. I think ultimately we have three main theories to run with, and you can all tell me what you think about them as well as your own ideas down below. The first theory is that Hey Pikmin takes place after Pikmin 4 if Pikmin 4 is a continuation of the original story. This option makes some sense, but the main hangup is how Pikmin 4 is set up to be the beginning of a story rather than the most recent entry. The other theory is that Pikmin 4 is a reboot or a retelling of the original story, and Hey Pikmin takes place after the events we've yet to see. This could work really well because Olimar has the dolphin in Pikmin 4, which could explain the dolphin 2 in Hey Pikmin, and the sudden need for these ships to run on Sparklium as well. The main thing I think we'll have to wait and see is if Pikmin 4's version of the dolphin even has an eternal fuel dynamo, and if so, what it actually does in that game. My bet is that Nintendo realized how tricky it would be to keep coming up with reasons to collect things as well as things to collect, so they wrote in a new thing for you to have to worry about in this new take of the story. Adding Sparklium as a fuel source does kind of change up what we know and expect though. Also, to add to my earlier point, wouldn't it be extremely weird if the Rescue Corps, you know, the people in charge of saving people across the galaxy, it'd be weird if they didn't have an eternal fuel dynamo, but Olimar, a guy who works for a shipping company, did have one. It seems to me like in this new or alternative telling of the story, unlimited fuel machines have not been invented, and that's just one of the many minor differences between the timelines. In this setup, Pikmin 4 would be the first to happen in the series, retelling the events of Pikmin 1 and hashing Pikmin 2 up to a bad dream. In this timeline, Olimar crashes on PNF 404, the events of Pikmin 4 play out in place of Pikmin 1 and 2, Pikmin 3 still happens like normal, and most recently on the timeline is Hey Pikmin. The only problem with this one that I have is that in the side stories of Pikmin 3, Olimar specifically says it's his third time on the planet, so he has to return at some point between Pikmin 4 and Pikmin 3. But the events of Pikmin 2 don't seem to be an option. My thoughts are that the next game we get will probably be a follow-up story for Pikmin 4 and will most likely fall between Pikmin 4 and Pikmin 3, and it would most likely be a retelling or an alternate story for Pikmin 2. That's all a bit confusing, but I hope you were able to follow my train of thought there. The last and honestly easiest option is that Hey Pikmin simply doesn't even happen. Here's some spoilers for the ending of Hey Pikmin, but the ending post-credit cutscene of the game literally just states that Olimar snapped out of his daydream when he sees Hocketate, meaning he was probably on a routine trip sometime after his initial crash, and was simply reminiscing on the adventures he had with the Pikmin. It would seem the only canon thing from this game is that Olimar eventually gets a dolphin too, as we see him flying that ship after he snaps out of the daydream. Still, the ultimate question is what order do these games happen in, and why? My current understanding of the overall timeline goes like this. We actually have two: the classic timeline and the modern timeline. In the classic timeline, humans are wiped out much earlier due to radiation, and the games happen in order of Pikmin 1, Pikmin 2, and then Pikmin 3. That's the classic timeline, no strings attached. The modern timeline starts with Pikmin 4, as it retells the first game. Pikmin 5 would eventually retell the story of Pikmin 2, then we have Pikmin 3 as it is, and then Hey Pikmin at the end. Pikmin 3 works in either timeline because as far as I can find, the actual events of Pikmin 2 are never mentioned in the game. They say Olimar has been there before and we see the actual Hocketate ship, but I couldn't find any mention of the previous debt or golden carrots. Obviously, there is a lot of dialogue in that game, and I could have very easily missed it, but all I could find for certain is that Olimar had been there twice before, and he brought the Hecate ship this time. One thing I find specifically interesting though is that Olimar doesn't mention using the Hecate ship for any previous trips on Pikmin 3, nor is it gold like we see at the end of Pikmin 2. What's really interesting about that is we see Olimar bad-mouthing the Hecate ship in Pikmin 3, saying that it may have been good in its day, but now it's not so great. It would seem that if he had any previous experience with this ship, he may have mentioned any times it gave him trouble in the past, but we don't really see that in Pikmin 3. The other thing I mentioned about the ship being gold, that's interesting because the golden ship is canon to the classic timeline in Pikmin 2. In the classic timeline, I assume the gold coating was sold to help recover the debt, and that's why we don't see it in Pikmin 3. And I believe the reason it's not gold for Pikmin 3 in the modern timeline is because the events of Pikmin 2 are going to play out differently than we've already seen. Really, I could keep going and going about Hey Pikmin. Like I said, it does a lot of weird things to the timeline and story, and it gives us a lot to talk about. Let me know what you think about Hey Pikmin, and let me know how you like my classic and modern interpretation of the timeline. Do you agree with it? If not, what's your take on the timeline? Don't forget to make sure you're subscribed and consider leaving a like if you enjoyed this video. That's all the time I have for today's episode, but stay tuned, Variety Television will be right back.